back when I was in high school, I was dating this girl. We met on a church trip, so it was serious. It had come time where we were just about ready to break up. It just wasn't moving in the right direction. And so I was like at a point where I had never really formally broken up with someone before. I'd had the pleasure of having other people do that for me most of my life. And so I went to go break up with this girl, and she's like, oh, I just had the worst day. My aunt died. I was like, this probably isn't the time for this. So now we're together for 2 more months. I'm finally like, all right, we buried that aunt. We're good. Now it's time to exit, right? Like, this is my cue to leave. And so I go to talk to her, and she's like, I just had the worst day. My grandma died. And at this point, I'm like, I'm not sure this is a good idea, like, because who else is going to die the next time I try to break up with you? Like, what's going to happen to me? And so I finally, like, just decide after a few more months, like, it's time. I'm doing it no matter what. So I get on the phone, and at the time I ran a radio show with a couple of friends called Big Dan and the Rowdy Rascals. We played all the best alt-rock hits of the early to mid-2000s. So we were in a break. We were in a commercial break, me and the Rowdy Rascals. I get on the phone. I've got my courage up, and so I do it. I'm in the other room. I'm like, hey, it's been fun, but I think we should just be friends, blah, blah, blah. And then I go back in, and it's done. It's over. I finally did it. And I sit down, and my friends are like, you know we were on, right? And so I immediately called to apologize, and she hadn't been listening to the show, and somehow I got mad. And so we got in an argument about how she wasn't supporting my radio show enough to listen to me accidentally break up with her on live radio.
There we go.
That was our very own grubby little producer, Dan Sheehan. And this is We Still Like You, the show where we record people getting on stage and reliving their most shameful moments in front of a live audience. I'm Jesse Batend. A quick note before we get started. Last weekend, We Still Like You celebrated our 3-year anniversary. Before this podcast existed, for almost an entire year, we were doing shows in apartments all around Chicago. Amazingly, it kept growing, and soon there were strangers in all of our houses. Over the next few years, we moved into a theater, started up new chapters of the live show in multiple states around the country, and the podcast even gets listeners from around the world. To everyone who has listened to our podcast or come out to a live show or recommended it to a friend, thank you. We wouldn't be here without you. And with that, let's get into some shame. After a breakup, it can be hard to see what's even right in front of you. The direction of your life shifts suddenly, and you have to fumble around for a while before things start making sense. At some point, after most breakups, there's a change. Eventually, instead of wanting to feel sad, you want to feel good. You start laying new track. But before that happens, you've just gotta feel sad. All you really can do is try to mitigate the damage. Comedian Dave Losso recently went through a breakup and came up with a positive way to deal with his feelings. From Chicago, here's Dave Losso.
So it's been 2 years since my girlfriend left me. So I feel like at this point she's confident in her decision. Can probably stop calling her my girlfriend too. Also because I have a new girlfriend and she hates when I tell that. So, but we broke up. We lived together for a couple years, and so I had dealt with breakups before, and I usually didn't deal with them in good ways. One of them, I threatened to kill my friend Dale with a bat because he had sex with my girlfriend in a sleeping bag. It's fine. It's another time I got drunk and almost crashed my car into a cemetery where I felt like I belonged. So when this breakup had happened, I wanted to deal with it in a more positive way. So I lived in a blanket fort in my living room for 40 days, like a divorced 6-year-old. the world's littlest bachelor. I had 4 walls and a ceiling. I had about 7 pillows. You know, when usually when people get older and they get dumped in their late 20s, they're like, I'm gonna get my shit together, and I'm like, I can fit a mini fridge in here. Hell yeah! All right. Like, this is how I'm gonna deal with this. My friends asked me, there has been some low points to living in a fort, and I was like, oh, you mean besides building and living in a fort? Yeah, there were a few. I was coming home one day to my fort, and I heard an alarm going off, and I rushed into my apartment to find the superintendent of my building. He's holding my carbon monoxide detector in his hand, and it's very much going off. And he's looking at it. Then he looks at me. Then he looks at it, and he looks at me, and he just goes, "I'm gonna go ahead and say no gas leak." And I was like, "No, man, that's not how that works." Like, tell you what, you can go pray the gas away. I'm going to call the fire department. The guys whose job it is to decide that. I'll just do that. So there's a fire department directly across the street from my apartment. So I don't know why this wasn't his first thought. I don't know why he was going to make it go away with his brain or something. So I call the fire department, and I say, listen, I live across the street, like right across the street. I might have a gas leak. Can you send like 1 to 2 people over to take a look at this? And for some reason they heard, can you send every fireman and an entire fire truck to just do the loudest U-turn of all time and just hold up traffic? And can you make sure the sirens are on too, so everyone who is stuck in traffic knows who caused it? So I see this happening, and I'm like, I'm going to wait upstairs. So I go up, I run upstairs, I leave my front door open, I run up to my living room to get ready to present it to him. This is my first gas leak. I don't know how this works. I'm trying to be a gracious host. And so I'm waiting and forgetting about what's behind me as I'm standing there in this living room. And then I had the unique experience of 6 Chicago firemen, all one by one, walk into my apartment and then just stop dead in their tracks as they see me in my fort. And and they're staring at me for like a long amount of time. Like the amount of time that says we forgot there was a gas leak. Which is to be expected because, they're trained to respond to a gas leak. They're not trained to respond to a gas leak and then just stumble upon some sad dude's whimsical hobo tent. They're not prepared for that. So they're just staring at it but something clicks in their head that they're like, oh yeah, we need to do something. So they start to work. I don't know how. So they're just shifting around, but I can see that they're all kind of giving each other eyes. They don't want to make fun of me, but they know I was made fun of as a child, believe it or not. And I've been to a mall before. I know what it's like when you're walking, you see a group of jocks down the way, and you're like, oh, yep, I'm getting called a fag today. All right, so it was that kind of look. So I could just see these firemen are figuring this out. They're like, we cannot make fun of this guy in here, but for sure we're going to go back later on to the fire department, just let this dude have it. We're just going to just put a pot of chili on and just fucking rip this nerd apart. And so I realize this, and I am just mortified. I'm just standing there in front of my fort with this stupid fucking smile on my face. But in my mind, I'm just like, I hope there's a gas leak right now and that it just blows up and kills all of us. When you're so embarrassed, you just want everyone to die. So I'm like, how could this be worse? How can it be worse than 6 grown men making fun of me in my fort? How about 9 grown men? Because then 3 People's Gas employees walked in. Why 3? Because they needed to send a supervisor on this one. And they were not expecting that, so they all walked in and they were all staring at me like they were trying to solve a sad puzzle. And one of the guys I realized is a supervisor because he pulled out a clipboard and a pen and started taking notes. I didn't even tell this guy what was happening. So there's a record somewhere at People's Gas of Cook County that has the word blanket fort in it. So now they're standing there, and then the fire department comes, and they grab the People's Gas, probably to show them like where the best place to make fun of me is. Look, we got a good nook over here. It's great. He can't hear us. So now I'm just like, I have 9 grown adults trying to process what is happening right now between a gas leak and the saddest thing they've ever seen. And I'm like, surely this is hell. Where is Satan? And just like I spit on a Ouija board, walked my landlord. And I know that's not a nice way to talk about my landlord, but recently I called him about a power outage, and his secretary for real suggested it was ghosts. So fuck this guy, all right? So he walks in, takes a look at my fort, and just goes, and then just proceeds to just, for some reason, give People's Gas the hardest time I've ever seen. Like, I don't know if this guy just, People's Gas all fucked this guy's wife at some point, but I just heard, yeah, you can't get to the gas because it's locked, man. Like, I don't know what he was trying to prove there. But I walked out to see what was happening, and he just turned to me. He was like, "Don't tell them anything." And I was like, "Tell them what? About the fucking ghosts? Like, what do you, like?" So they finally realize that it's not a gas leak. It's just that I live in a shitty apartment. So the fire department all leaves to go, I don't know, shoot a sexy calendar and call me a homo or whatever. And my landlord leaves, I don't know, probably to call ComEd and give them shit or something. So People's Gas are the last people to leave, and the supervisor and the trainee walk out, but the one grizzled veteran stops. He's like, "Hey, man, I gotta know. Sup with the fort?" And I explained to him, I was like, this is just this positive thing that I wanted to do because I'm dealing with a breakup. And I didn't want to go into any kind of, deconstructive ways to cope with this. And he just goes, "Man, that's what drinking's for." And then I took that man's advice. And if you want a real low point to living in a blanket fort, it's getting drunk and crying on it because you texted your girlfriend and asked her to please come home to the blankets. Guys, thank you so much. Thank you.
We love Dave here at We Still Like You. He's a huge part of helping us start up the Colorado chapter of the live show. He actually currently holds the record for most performances at any of our We Still Like You shows. So keep that in mind before you love him too. Coming up next, Colleen's boyfriend says 4 words he can never take back. Welcome back to We Still Like You. Our final story for today comes to you from comedian Colleen Watson. Colleen and her boyfriend had been dating for 8 years. She was finishing up her degree, he was starting a promising career in the tech industry, and then one sentence threw everything into question. From LA, here's Colleen Watson.
I met back in college. He was my neighbor. He was studying software engineering, so just a big fucking nerd. But really, really sweet. The sweetest guy ever. I was an awkward girl, and we hit it off. I decided I wanted to get a journalism degree, so I moved to San Jose, because that's the best place to go to school, just ever. And so he decided to come with me. We'd been dating for 7 years at this point. So I was turning 30 that year, and I was nervous about turning 30 because that's old. And I was like, I don't want to be old. I don't want to do this. And there's a lot of things I wanted to do. You know, I wanted to have my degree, and I wanted to be married. And those were what I wanted to do. I thought that was what you did when you turned 30. You know, you got married, you had kids. That's what my parents did. That's what everyone does. No one here? Okay. Cool. I was in school for a year, so I was really busy. He had a software engineering job in the whole tech industry. He was doing great. And then one morning, I just finished that year of school. He wakes me up early and is like, "We're gonna go on a hike." And I was like, "I don't want to go on a hike." And he's like, "Too bad." And I was like, "Fine." Like, we hadn't been spending a lot of time together, so I was like, "Okay, I should do this." He's also he was a big geocacher. He loves geocaching. I don't know if so I'm assuming everyone here knows what that is. It's really, yeah, if you don't know, it's a really nerdy scavenger hunt. You look up stuff on a GPS to find trinkets. It's lame. But he was really excited about doing this one. So, yeah. So we drove an hour and a half to this like point somewhere above the Golden Gate Bridge. And then we like hiked an hour and a half down to the Golden Gate Bridge onto this really pretty beach right underneath the Golden Gate Bridge. And we're sitting here looking for this geocache. And he said, "Hey, go look over there." And so it's like this cliff wall. And I walk over there and there's this like tin hanging on it. And so I opened the tin up and it said, "Turn around." And I turned around and he's on his knee. And he's got this big diamond ring just on his knees and like just looking so hopeful. And it's just like, "Will you marry me?" And I just stood there and like looked around. There was a tour boat going underneath the Golden Gate Bridge. And I distinctly remember, and I was like, "Can they all see this?" Because you can see this guy like on his knees, and I'm just slowly backing away at this point. But I didn't know what to say, and I just keep backing away, and then I didn't notice the log behind me, and I just tripped over the log, just on my ass. So now we're both down there, I'm in tears, and so he's like, "Well, will you marry me?" And he said it again, and so I was like, "I can't say yes." And he was like, "Okay. All right. Here, we'll take this anyways." And he like gave me the ring box. So I'm just staring at this, and he's like, "Well, I guess we should go back up to the car, which is an hour and a half away." But before we do that, he takes off his backpack, takes out a bottle of champagne, and 2 like glasses. Is like, "Well, I guess we won't be needing this."
Holy shit!
And then we slowly make our way back up to the car as I'm just holding this ring box. It's still open because I haven't shut it. It's just like, oh God, all the way back up to the car, which was an hour and a half away. And then it's an hour and a half drive back to our house. And it was just awkward silence that whole time. So I decided, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go stay with my mom, because this was too awkward. But I was leaving in the morning, and so we were trying to watch TV that night, and just awkwardly on the couch, and every goddamn thing was some proposal. Like every girl was like, "Oh my God, yes, I want to do this," and and I'm just like, oh, this sucks. He's like, I know every single channel. And so it was just horrible. And it was just the worst night of my life. So I leave. And I know it's awkward, and it gets worse. So I moved out, like 8 years and suddenly nothing. And I moved in with my mom. And then for 2 months I didn't hear anything from him, which I thought was fine because, you know, he probably hated me, which was legitimate at that point. He'd asked all my parents for permission and everything. Yes. And so he went through all that awkward stuff and did everything. And then 2 months afterwards, I got a phone call from him, and he's just in tears, just incredibly upset. And he's like, Colleen, my mom's been diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor. He's like, and I really need you right now. And there was this guy he was my best friend for 8 years. And I loved him, I cared about him completely, and he was just the best guy. And I also knew that if I was nice at that point, we would have gotten back together and had to have rushed into a marriage because his mom had less than a year to live. So knowing this, what I said to him was, dude, that sucks. And then said, sorry, I have to go.
And that does it for this episode of We Still Like You. As always, thank you for listening. Thank you so much if you came out to the 3-year anniversary to celebrate with us. A massive thank you if you've ever performed on our show. We've only made it this far because of your stories. That's 100% true. Keep on sending them. WeStillLikeYou@gmail.com is where you can reach us. If you have any sweet pictures of a blanket fort you've ever built, we'd love to see that too. I'm Jesse Batend. Thanks again for joining us on this weird little ride. We'll see you soon.
We Still Like You is produced by Dan Sheehan, Danny Gallegos, Tyler Snodgrass, Shannon Knoll, and J. Michael Osborne, who is also our resident live artist. In Los Angeles, it is produced by Andy Sell.
The podcast is produced by Jesse Batend, engineered by Jesse Batend and Sam Haas. Our theme song is Specific People by Jake Tobin. Big thanks to all the people who've housed our live shows at various undisclosed locations around Chicago, and to you, the listener, for being there.
If you'd like to know more about where you can watch We Still Like You or submit to be on We Still Like You, please check out our website, which is westilllikeyou.com, and also you can find us on Facebook.
Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.